Breaking news coming in, Nisa, there has been a mishap involving a submarine off the coast of Mumbai. Sources in the Navy say that the mishap involves a Kilo Class Submarine. The incident took place off the coast of Mumbai. So, Kilo Class Submarine would essentially be something like the INS Sindhuratna, one of the big armories with the Indian Navy. Sources also saying that the Navy personnel, some of them have been injured in this incident. For more, let's get a word from our strategic editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's joining us on the phone line. Gaurav, what more details can you share with us?
INS Sindhuratna is a Kilo Class submarine. It was on an exercise, and while it was sailing on her own steam, she was underwater when suddenly there was what is suspected is there was some kind of a gas leak from the battery compartment. This is what our sources in the Navy are telling us. Very, very preliminary information just as yet. A board of inquiry has been ordered. Now, when this gas leak took place, several sailors who were in the vicinity of the battery compartment, they felt suffocated, and at least one of them, we are told, is serious. He was critical, so much so that the submarine suddenly, surfaced. And that's the time that there was an SOS call that was made out. A helicopter was rushed in, and it's some personnel. We don't know the exact numbers just as yet, but some Indian Navy personnel on board INS Sindhuratna have been airlifted. They've been heli-lifted to safety for emergency medical evacuation. This is the information that we have so far. Why did this battery leak take place would be a matter for investigation of this board of inquiry. The submarine, we are told, is now on its way back.
All right, our Strategic Affairs Editor Gaurav Sawant taking us through details of the story that we're getting in this hour. INS Sindhuratna, we're being told, faced an incident this morning. There was a suspected gas leak from the battery. Navy personnel suffered injuries. Some of them also had to be airlifted for emergency evacuation purposes. The incident took place off the coast of Mumbai. Gaurav, also explained to us an incident of this nature. How often does it happen on submarines, and is it something that is unheard of, especially in the kind of Kilo Class submarine that we're talking about?
Look, these are Russian Kilo Class submarines. INS Sindhuratna, these entire series of submarines, they are the mainstay of the Indian Navy submarine fleet. We've had one unfortunate incident with one of these Kilo Class submarines, but just now a battery leak has taken place even before. In the past also, one incident had proved to be fatal. But battery leaks, there are standard operating procedures that you put in place to ensure battery leaks do not happen or gases do not emit the way they do. But something has gone wrong. It would be too premature to say why it happened, how it happened. Whenever battery leaks take place, there are standard operating procedures that are already in place. The board of inquiry will see whether that was followed in the right earnest. But the fact that the captain decided this was an emergency and the submarine surfaced and a helicopter went in to rescue Indian Navy personnel, we still don't know the numbers. Navy being extremely cagey about sharing information just as yet, especially given the fact that there have been a series of accidents involving Indian Navy ships and submarines in the recent past. The Navy's been relooking some of its procedures. It's been relooking some of its standard operating procedures also. But this particular incident, we will only know details once Navy's inquiry is completed.
Also, Gaurav, you're telling us that some Navy personnel have been airlifted for emergency evacuation. Are the other Navy personnel on board the submarine safe? Has the problem been checked?
They are safe. The battery compartment is right at the bottom of the submarine, and the submarine was brought up. The hatch was opened. Those who were directly affected, those who were in the vicinity of that area where the batteries are located, they were immediately evacuated. The others are out in fresh air. The submarine is sailing on her own steam. We know that, which is what the Indian Navy sources are telling us, that the submarine is sailing on her own steam. But she will be brought back. She will be berthed to check why this mishap took place. Whether she's crippled because of this and whether tugs will have to be then moved in, we still don't know. The Navy is saying the information is just coming in. They are also trying to get more details to figure out why this happened. But there has been an accident like this even in the past, and there are standard operating procedures that are followed to ensure something like this does not happen.
All right, so standard operating procedures being followed right now. And Gaurav, as you're also telling us, about half a dozen cases of mishaps involving submarines and naval ships have been reported in the last 6 months. The Navy tried to dismiss them as random incidents, but it was also forced to order an inquiry after Defence Minister A.K. Antony stepped in. This happened about last month.
That's right. Not just with Indian Navy, Submarine Sindhuratna, the submarine, there was an accident that took place right inside the harbour when the submarine was berthed. It was leaving for an operation, and suddenly there was a massive explosion and major loss of lives. That was a major incident while Navy salvaging that submarine to try and find out why that accident took place. Apart from that, whether it's with INS Talwar, one of Navy's ships or submarines, there have been a series of incidents, 11 to be precise, in the past 1 year. Defence Minister A.K. Antony said he was extremely concerned about these number of accidents that are taking place. 3 captains were removed from command because of different incidents. But what the Navy is saying is these are all isolated incidents. You have to look at each and every one of them separately. In some cases, ships have collided with either fishing trawlers or other ships only because the density of shipping transport in shallow waters is so much that Navy finds it difficult to maneuver. It's a deep water Navy. It's meant to operate on the high seas. But post 2611, their task has changed. They are now more engaged towards coastal protection, and that is why some of these incidents are taking place. I spoke to a very senior naval admiral recently who said, who blamed the media for blowing some of these incidents out of proportion. He said if a car is traveling on the road, there will be a tire puncture, and some of those incidents he described as tire punctures in the Navy. But this is far more serious than that, and the Navy will inquire to get to the bottom of this.
Absolutely. And Gaurav, the INS Sindhuratna, you're telling us, is the Kilo Class Submarine. What are the crucial features of, I beg your pardon, submarines like this? And of course, we do know that they're crucial assets in our armory.
Well, the submarine arm of any navy is perpetually at war. Surface ships may or may not be at war, but a submarine is constantly lurking in hostile territory. It is constantly keeping an eye on enemy movement or adversary movement. A submarine arm is extremely crucial, and these Kilo Class submarines of the Indian Navy, they form the backbone of the Indian Navy, and they are constantly on a patrol, and their patrol could be very close to an adversary country's coastline, whether it's to the west or to the east. It's constantly out. So your submarine arm is the most crucial arm of the Navy because it is sea denial to the adversary. The enemy does not know where a submarine is. She could be lurking beneath the surface anywhere, and it forms a very crucial part of your triad, of the country's triad, to respond. Should there be an attack on the country, the submarine could be anywhere. It's very difficult to detect, and she could, respond. A submarine can respond. That is why it's very crucial. India has embarked on a very, very ambitious mission to acquire more submarines. These are Russian submarines. You have German submarines. Now you're acquiring French Scorpion submarines. So submarine arm is extremely crucial. But somewhere down the line, perhaps, maintenance is an issue that the Navy is grappling with. The Navy chief insists, and I had interviewed the Navy chief, Admiral D.K. Joshi, some time back, and he had told me that isolated incidents do take place because we are a big Navy, we operate extensively. Some accidents will take place, or you might as well mothball all your equipment and keep them in your drawing room. You operate them, there will be accidents. That is their logic. But somewhere down the line, an effort has to be made to ensure accidents are kept down to the bare minimum at what the Navy says at an acceptable level, and that is exactly what they claim their endeavor is. The Defence Minister expects better of them.
All right, Gaurav, stay on with us. Our Strategic Affairs Editor, Gaurav Sawant, explaining to us exactly how important submarines are to the Indian armour, the naval armour especially. He's also telling us about how about half a dozen incidents have been reported over the last 6 months. This one in particular involving INS Sindhuratna, a Kilo Class submarine. We're also being joined by Vikas Mishra, our correspondent in Mumbai. Vikas, we believe that 5 personnel of the Navy have been airlifted and have been hospitalized. What's their condition as of now?
What we have learned from the Navy sources that they have been airlifted from the INS Sindhuratna, and they were taken to a Navy hospital which is there located in the Navy Nagar, which is located in Kulaba. And apart from the helicopters, there was a fast-craft boat as well, which was used, which is still there near the submarine. And the incident all happened around early morning when the report came in that there was a smoke detected into the battery compartment of the submarine. Then the Navy Western Command got into action, and the helicopters as well as the fast-craft the boat was sent in. And right now, what we are learning, the helicopters are back to the base, but the fast-craft boats are still there, and trying to see that there is no more further smoke coming out from the submarine. This is what is happening, and but there are 5 people who have been confirmed that who have been taken to the Navy hospital in Navy Nagar. Back to you.
All right, Vikas, stay on with us. For the benefit of our viewers who are joining us right now, there's been a mishap involving a submarine off the coast of Mumbai. Sources in the Navy are confirming to headlines today that the mishap involves a Kilo Class submarine called the INS Sindhuratna. The incident basically involves a suspected gas leak from the battery compartment. Several Navy personnel are believed to be injured. Some 5 of them had to be airlifted for emergency evacuation. They've been hospitalized. And as Vikas Mishra was telling us, they've been taken to the Navy hospital. We're being joined by Commodore Uday Bhaskar on the phone line. Thanks so much, sir, for speaking to Headlines today. Your first reaction, yet another incident involving a Kilo Class submarine.
The first reaction, Simi, really is one of deep concern and some anguish that we have another such mishap on a submarine. And the first priority, of course, would be the safety of the personnel who have been affected. Now, from the reports that are literally coming in, and I'm hearing this on your channel, it does appear that there was a gas leak.
Yes.
And this is something that all submariners are very concerned about, the exigency that there would be an unanticipated gas leak that could lead to an imbalance in terms of the oxygen levels within the compartments. And as I said, I am only conjecturing at this stage, absent an official report. But this is something that I'm sure the submarine, in particular the Sindhuratna and its crew, and the Navy and the submarine arm would be reviewing as to how and why exactly this had happened. But I think the broader picture is something that you have just said in your opening remarks, that given what happened last year in August, and again, this particular incident, the Navy and the submarine arm, I'm sure, would have to review their internal procedures and ensure that wherever there is an inadequacy, that it would be addressed in the appropriate manner. But I just make one suggestion, if I may, that absent more credible and authenticated information, that perhaps there should be no finger pointing at this stage, and let the service really come up with whatever be the summary of why and how this had happened. But yes, dismay and concern, and our, I would say, priority at this stage is the safety of the personnel who've been taken to the hospital.
Absolutely. Commodore Uday Bhaskar, I also want to ask you, how common are these incidents, especially involving Kilo Class submarines that are really the pride of the Indian Navy, and how long does it take for the personnel on board to contain the crisis?
Well, much would depend, I would say, to answer the second question first. First of all, these are not common. I think it would be misleading to suggest that accidents on Kilo Class boats are common, or to make the extrapolation that the Kilo as a platform is inherently unsafe. I think that would be an invalid conclusion. But when accidents or incidents, I would say, occur on a submarine, the crew is very well trained. I mean, this goes across the board for any fighting platform, whether you talk of an aircraft or a ship or a submarine, that in the event of a mishap or an incident, the crew is trained to deal with it. Now, one of the most common hazards for a ship, particularly a warship or a submarine, is fire, given the way in which the compartments are configured. And when a submarine or a ship is in harbor and there is a lot of maintenance work, including welding, people are on top alert. Yet, mishaps and incidents do occur, and the very fact that the crew could be airlifted in such a swift manner, to my mind, is indicative of what I would call as a very high degree of professionalism.
All right. Commodore Bhaskar, stay on with us. We're also being joined by our Strategic Affairs Editor, Gaurav Sawant, who's getting us the latest on the story. Gaurav, what will happen now? Is the evacuation complete? Is the submarine going to be taken to the harbour to check whether there are other leaks and whether everything is fine with the ship?
The information that we're getting just now is that there was a very senior officer on board the submarine. The submarine had just come back after a fit, and there was some equipment that was being tested with senior officers on board, and she was about 50 to 60 nautical miles off the coast of Mumbai when this sudden gas leak was detected. And we're still not sure, Navy sources not confirming whether this came from the battery compartment or close to the battery compartment, but she immediately surfaced. And the moment she surfaced, as Commodore Uday Bhaskar was rightly pointing out, standard operating procedures were followed. A faster track craft came in, and when senior officers are anywhere on board a submarine, when there is a trial on, there were other ships which were close by. They came in, but for emergency evacuation of 5 sailors, the helicopter came in. And Commodore Bhaskar can tell us better, this is the 3rd incident involving a Kilo Class submarine. While they are the mainstay of our submarine fleet, Sindhuratna blew up in the harbour. Sindhu Ghosh, when she was coming into the harbour recently, a lot of mud and dirt was kicked up. Whether she was grounded or not, we're still waiting to hear that officially from the Navy. But sources say she wasn't grounded. The captain, in his wisdom, decided to stay where he was so that the submarine does not run aground. And then when the tide came in again, the submarine came in. And this incident now. So do we need to relook some of our procedures? Do we need to relook some of our standard operating procedures? Perhaps look at our training, look at some of the equipment. Are we giving them another, lease of life when we should be changing it? All of that perhaps the Navy needs to look at. And Commodore Bhaskar is in the best position to tell our viewers what needs to be done here.
Absolutely. Gaurav and Commodore Uday Bhaskar, thanks so much for speaking to Headlines today.